Bruce, how are you, mate?
I'm great, thanks, Leigh. How you doing?
Yeah, really well. It's good to see you today, mate. This is our first crack at having a bit of a chinwag, a bit of a chat about all things fearless, mate.
Yep, absolutely. If we're going to get people unstuck, we've got to teach them about living fearlessly.
100%. Now, you have a lot of experience in this space of helping men, women, children, all sorts of people live fearlessly, mate. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so actually, I need to be clear. I don't work with children. That's beyond my capability. But anyone who's reasonably adult, basically, it all came from in my life. I never really felt comfortable, even though I did a lot. I knew inside of me most of the time I was, terrified something would go wrong, terrified of what people would think of me. And so I've been on a whole long journey and basically have worked out that fear is just a tool I'm using to keep safe. So it's a tool, it's not a real thing. When I was younger, I used to think fear is a real thing, just like people say, oh, anger is a real thing. And I go, well, can you buy me, like, you know, buy me a glass of fear, buy me a glass of anger, it doesn't exist unless I create it. And then people say, oh, yeah, but other people make me. And I go, well, how is it that you think I can make you, feel angry or whatever, but you can't guarantee that you're going to make me happy? And so, then I got really interested in, like, how do we construct fear in our life, but more importantly, how do we dissolve it? How do we get rid of it and start living life fearlessly?
Yeah, awesome. And tell me, Bruce, we've been lucky enough to work together for 3 or 4 years now, maybe even 5 years. What do you see as being the key components to busting through fear?
Key components. Yeah, you can see by my hesitation, like I've run through. Well, there's lots, but what are the key components? Number one, desire. So you've got to have the desire to have more than what you've got, because what we've got is what we've got because of the way we think about ourselves in life. And if I don't have a desire to have anything different or better, I just say, oh well, that's who I am and that's how life is. Then you're not going to bust through fear or anything really. So
Yeah,
first the desire, um, and then education. You got to learn some stuff. Got to learn. Like, I teach the alternative reality of life. We all went through school and taught all sorts of logical systems and structures and, like, how to pass tests, but we weren't taught about how life works, how our mind works, especially. And that's the bit that you and I share. We're intensely interested in how does our mind work, and when our mind's working for us, it's amazing. And
yeah,
when our mind's working against us, it's not quite so amazing. In fact, some people would say it's really shitty.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, so education and then finally activation. I've got to start doing the practices that develop my mind to give me choice, because it's all a choice.
Yep, yep. So desire, learning, and then choice. Yeah,
Yeah, yep,
yeah,
pretty much.
yeah. And yeah, I know you've taught this really, really well to me. One of the great things that I learned in some of our work together was understanding what fear really is and what sits below it. And there's three fantastic questions that we can ask, which can help you highlight your fear. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but they go like this. The first one is, what is the greatest fear that someone else could find out about you? Yeah, that's one question. Yeah. Second question is then, what is your greatest fear about what somebody could do to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Can you remember what your third question was?
Well, it's really interesting. If I said these things, they're lost in the myriad of things I've said. So,
Well,
no, I can't remember what I said the third one was.
right, so it's what somebody would find out about you.
Yeah.
It's what somebody could do to you. And then the third one was what could happen to you. Yeah.
Okay.
What could
Yeah.
happen to me? What's
Yeah.
the biggest fear around what happens to me? And I think when people ask those questions of themselves, those stories are the ones that have been on repeat for a long, long time.
So, my experience is that most of our fears were constructed as an early part of our life. So
Yep.
you did right. All of those things, the things we worry about people finding out about us or doing to us or might happen to me, generally they're referenced not out of who we are now, but out of something that happened in the past. And we just learnt them and repeat them.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And it becomes a loop. Yep.
Yeah.
And it becomes a behavior, and it becomes a this is who I am. Yeah.
Correct.
So we can, and when we talk about these things, and in a lot of the work that we're doing with men is really around this performance-based self-esteem piece, where we've got we imagine the 10-year-old boy waiting for dad to come home from work, and dad comes home and says to son, how'd you go in your maths test today? How did you go at cross country today? And that boy becomes pretty accustomed to whatever response he gives to his father is going to determine how his father responds to him. So if he says, yeah, I got 95% in my maths exam today, Dad, he assumes that Dad's going to be pretty happy. And if he says he got 50%, Dad's going to be, well, what are you going to do about that? That's not cool, right? And I guess what I'm saying, this piece around where we get our beliefs from, these stories that are on repeat, is if that happens for that boy at 10, 10 and a half, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, all the way through, suddenly what happens is the boy learns that his dad's in relationship with his performance, but not with him.
Yeah, I'd agree that's, if you're a male, that's probably a lot of the programming, but there's a myriad of fears. See, I would say probably, so part of what I believe is that there are pivotal events in our life, and in the scenario that you're talking about, I agree. The boy learns that he's measured according to performance. What he's craving for is love and acceptance. But I've found alongside of that, often there are trigger events that set up the big fears that limit us, which is where he comes home and dad says, how did you do at school? Where's your report? And he gets a report and it's like 72%. And the dad goes, so how come it's not 95?
100%.
And immediately the emotional wash that flows through them creates a whole scenario of like, oh my God, I'm not getting love and acceptance. Must be something wrong with me. What's wrong with me? I'm not good enough. And then he has two choices. Most men at that point will make one of two choices. They'll either go, right, you're right, I'm not good enough, and I'm going to be bloody useless from now on, and gives up.
Goes into shame.
He goes, right, I am never, ever, 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 ever going to give any possibility of someone telling me I'm not good enough, and becomes a super high achiever. He goes for the 95% and does the whole lot. But the whole thing is neither solution, which is the behavior we see, actually deals with the whole inside, which is, I just want to be loved and acknowledged for who I am right now. And instead I've got the message, I'm not good enough. And people carry that like I'm 68 years of old and I've been carrying that like probably for about 50 of those 68 years,
If not longer. Yeah.
If not longer.
Yeah. And again, it's, again, the slant, what I'm hearing you say is is that we go into a better than or less than. Yeah. When we
Truly.
move into that, I need to be better than in order to get my value. And if I'm not better than, I'm less than. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this creates this pattern of behavior or this belief or this story that we run. And that runs on repeat for so long. And the thing about this is that either way, what we're really seeking, even though what we're really seeking is love and acceptance, what that tends to lean to is that we start to look for intoxication,
Yeah.
be it intoxication of performance, right?
Yeah.
But then when we don't get the intoxication of performance, perhaps, and be that at work, be that in sport, be that as the best dad or the best partner or the best lover or the best whatever, right? If we don't get that intoxication, then as men, what we tend to move to then is, well, where else do we get the intoxication?
Yeah.
And hence, what we're dealing with the blokes we're dealing with, I'm sure with a lot of the men that you've worked with in your time, we're dealing with either workaholism, we're dealing with drinking, we're dealing with drugs, we're dealing with sex, we're dealing with all these things that provide this short-term intoxication, but it's the same pattern of I feel better than, but then when it's finished, I feel less than because I still haven't found that love and connection.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
And that's, when we talk about living fearlessly, I think this is, one thing for men. I think there's a perception sometimes. I'm curious as to your experience with this but we think fearless is that we go out and we take everything on and we do everything and away we go. When in actual fact, living fearlessly is where we're living in no contempt for ourselves and no contempt for anybody else. That's fearless living, because then you get after the stuff that's true and authentic to you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your experience is in that, or how you help people get into that space.
Yeah. I agree with you. People think living fearlessly is you turn into this rhinoceros that takes on every bloody challenge. But what we're saying is fear is a constructed state to stay safe.
Yeah.
And we can pretty much only entertain one state at a time. Like, it's hard to be really, really, really joyous and to be miserable at the same time. You generally pick one or the other.
Yeah.
So the art of living fearlessly is removing the fear, allows what's already inside of us. And this is one of the core principles that I believe, is that every positive emotion, every positive motivation is already built into us. But through life and through the challenges we face, just being a human being, we got this overlay of fears, and they've got all different shapes and sizes. But following the techniques that you and I have both been trained in, people can let go of fear as their solution. And when they let go of that, all of this other stuff, this like joy of life, like there's a real difference between I'm not going to let any bastard put me down and I love life and let's see what we can do with it. It's a different energy because, every emotion is energy in motion.
Yep.
We've got to have emotion to get things done. We need energy to get things done. And there are two sources of energy. One is fear. One is all of the things, what will people find out about me? What are people going to do to me? What's going to happen to me? The other one is joy and the love of life, which is, I know I'm alive. Everything around me is amazing. What can I do with what I've got? Now, people achieve really great things. The problem is that when people are sourced out of fear, there's always a cost. Like you've said, when they're sourced out of fear, they might turn to alcoholism or, drugs or workaholism or sex or whatever. The things that it will cost you are relationship, health, opportunity, money, and last of all, and it's a big issue for men, fun. Like men have swallowed this frickin' horse-sized pill of being serious. Life is so serious, life and death. And when you remove fear, then you find like there's a heap of fun to be had. And I don't have to worry about all of the things that I used to. Once it's gone, once I've resolved them, the energy's there and I don't have to work as hard as I used to. I got more energy now. Physically, I'm older and more of a, old bloke than I was. But in terms of internal energy, I'm more than I've ever had.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I hear you on that. I mean, I wonder what your comment on this experience is, because see, my experience as I've gone through this journey of trying to pull myself out of that grandiosity and up out of shame is that I don't experience the same highs I used to, right? Because I feel like and my reflection on it is that those highs I were feeling were really fake, right? They were fake highs, and eventually they're going to come, as you mentioned, with a cost. And that cost was, oh my God, now I feel shit about myself for
Yeah.
days because I've let myself down. I've broken another promise to myself. And so that high felt giddy. And so when you start to do this work, what I've found is there's this sort of almost a rhythm that you find that doesn't involve the same highs, but you don't have the lows. But the beautiful part about it is there's this joy and contentment that you can find more regularly. Not all the time. Bloody hell. I still sure you're the same. I mean, you're a bit wiser and only a wee bit older than me. But you know, I think this understanding that it's okay for it not to feel as high, because I find that's, you know, with a lot of the men we work with, they get this massive shift. And they go, I feel better, I feel better, I feel better. And then they go, but I just want to feel that giddy high I felt when I was 25 or 40 or whatever. It's probably not going to come. And if it is, the likelihood is it's probably going to come with a crash on the other side.
Yeah.
So learning to be content with, I wonder how do you sort of work with helping people stay content in that space?
Well, yeah, I'm a big believer, and we've got to have projects. You know, some people call them goals, but I call them projects. And it's like when I'm truly satisfied with life, it's an actual feeling, and it becomes a background hum of like, you know, I love my life, and I agree. The highs are generally a reflection of like I've got to get far enough away from feeling that shame that, you know, I've got to get there. I've got to get there, and if I'm not there, I'm nothing. Whereas there's this middle ground of like, life is great. My life is great. I am, as you say, believe it or not, and people will find it hard to believe, I am not yet perfect. But I have an amazing life. You know, I have my down days. I can't be bothered doing something, you know. But overall, and I've truly believe this about my life, my overall trend in energy and enjoyment of what I have is upward. I've got a few ups and downs along the way, but the trend is different. Whereas before, I was just like one of those ducks paddling under the water, you know, like it looked like I go like that, but if I average it out, it's like it was the same old in disguise, rather than growing and unfolding like it is now.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I never really considered this analogy, but it is like we're living more cumulative minutes in peace, contentment, joy, happiness. Cumulatively, there's more moments in that. They might not be these elements of ecstasy or elation like they maybe were in the past, but the cumulative moments are so much greater. And the thing about that is too, this is not just about how we feel, this is how we make people feel around us.
Correct.
So if we're constantly seeking those moments of elation, they're fleeting, and they're fleeting moments where we might make someone else feel good, but there might also be a cost to some of those, as you mentioned before. Whereas when you're in this space of cumulative moments of contentment, peace and joy, suddenly we're actually creating much better energy, and we are allowing the age-old law of attraction to attract in the things and the people and the energy and the vibration that we want. And I know that can sound woo-woo to people, but it's a real thing, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely. Life is energy. You know, apparently we're just atoms held together by the attraction of the different energies, you know, and our thoughts are an energy. It's like, you know, it's no one knows how the heck this universe works except for energy is a key part of it. And the overall energy I live with is going to determine what happens around me. Like you'll find people who are unhappy with themselves put out an energy, and pretty much everyone knows it. Like, they're not bad people, but geez, he really does not like himself. People pick up the vibe. So
They do.
yeah, I don't go from the highs, but I'm full of energy. It's just I'm not looking for that ecstasy moment so that I
Yeah.
feel safe from being to put it technically, a piece of shit.
Yeah. 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 And, you know, I can't speak for you because we've known each other for 4 or 5 years, but I certainly know that's where I existed. And there are times when I think this is a bit of the challenge that we have as men, is that those moments of real grandiosity where I'm the best, I feel great about myself, I'm this, I'm that, whatever it is, you know, those moments where you triumph in sport or at work or whatever it was, it's still, because see, we've got this predisposition to the programming, and the programming's been there for 40 years, so we're unwinding it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and again, I think this is one of the things you shared, is that for most of us, we're working on one big belief or one story at any given point in time. And that will run our lives until it doesn't. And the interpretation of that for me is that we won't even really realize when it's not. It will just evolve and happen, and it won't be an aha moment where we go, yes, I'm cured. It will be, that's no longer running my life. I have some control over that. But that doesn't mean it's not going to come back, which is why there's this beautiful challenge, I think, in continuing to work on our mental health as much as there is on our physical health. Because if we don't work on that, then those stories start to repeat. Yeah. Because they've been there for so long and they're ingrained and they're in a loop. And going back to your point about the boy, or the boy feeling that lack of connection, right? It was valid for him to feel like that. It was valid for him to feel like he had to perform. So when something's valid, it's hard sometimes to move away from it, right? And this is where that safety comes.
Yeah.
So, you know, this piece on working on that big belief, I love that concept of we're always working on it and we always will be, but we'll be making progress all the time.
Yeah. And what I've found is that our core vulnerabilities. So the way I find is, if I've got something that's been set up years and years ago, it's kind of like it can still be a vulnerability. And as I ask for more out of life, because if I ask for more out of life, life is going to show me what's in the way, what's blocking me, why can't I have it? And I'll find there might be another version of the old story. Like, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not good enough. When I was looking at really increasing my income, you know, I'm not good enough to earn 144,000 a year, you know. And then I decided, right, I've got that, and I worked through all the stuff, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And then I started to wake up. It was like, well, what if I could go here? What if it was 240 grand a year? Let's have a crack at that, you know. And then all of a sudden, my vulnerability, I'm not good enough for 240. I'm okay at 140, you know, but I have to work through a new set of the variations. But I know what to do. That's what's changed over the years. It's like, hang on a minute. That little ghost of the past is coming back. What do I need to address? What do I need to clean up from my past? What do I need to embrace in terms of my gifts and talents to be able to go to the next level, and then the next level? So, yeah, it is. We are an unfinished piece of art, really. Nothing wrong with who we are now. However, if we're growing and we're looking for more out of life, we're gonna revisit a few things or discover things we didn't know were already buried there.
Yeah. And for you, what if somebody's thinking about making change, right? Somebody's sitting there saying, yeah, you know what? Because you know, for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you again, but a lot of the people we work with, it's not necessarily that life's terrible. It's just that they're feeling like there's got to be more.
Yeah, there's something missing, or I feel stuck, or it's like, it's good, but if it's good, how come I wake in the morning and I don't like leap out of bed and I think, oh God, another day? Yeah, I agree. That's like you don't have to be lying in a gutter to feel dissatisfied with your life.
Yeah.
And the key thing is, and this is a really tricky concept for people to get their head around, is everything's a variable. Like my feelings are a variable. I can change them. My thoughts are a variable. My character is a variable. My behavior is a variable. I've heard, as you said earlier on, so many people say it's just who I am. I go, no, it's the sum total of your society programming, your parents' programming, decisions you made when you grew up. But all of those things are variables. And that's the key. Is like, okay, I need to change. Change is possible. My past is not my potential. One of the core phrases that started me off on this journey. My past, who I've been up until now, is not who I can be. I can change how I feel. I can change how I think. I can change how I behave. I can change my character. It's like that's the key. The belief that evolution, change, growth, whatever it's called, is possible. It's a truth.
Well, it is a truth, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
and that's actually a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you can change it, right? It's a fact that you can change it. We often talk about this, that, those stories that are on repeat, that are programmed, that we say this is who we are, they're really just shortcuts, right? They're shortcuts so that we can get on with life. Because if we had to analyze every decision we made to the nth degree, we'd get nothing done. So, but what most of us don't realize is we don't. A lot of people, when they lean into this work, they discover that, hey, this is the story that I am running. But as you said, it's a variable, or it's a choice, or there's some freedom in this. It's not. They're not chains. They're actually freedom.
Yeah.
You have the freedom to choose now. Yeah. You don't have to stay where you are, because the story is not true, and it's not a fact. It's your truth, but it's not a fact. And I think that distinction is so powerful for when people start to learn that. And it's when you see those light bulbs go off and you start to see, when you see guys like, we got a guy, Don, who had tried everything, had convinced himself, I am depressed, and was, completely chronically depressed. Yep, I am depressed. I can't even venture out, right? To the point where he realized those stories, and this is the thing, it's through systemic programming, and it's through repetition, and it's through being open and willing to learn, as you said before. It's possible for me to change. That absolutely it is. That's actually a fact. And and now he's running. He lives in Sedunia in SA. He's now running men's mental health nights, and this is a guy who'd been there for 15 years after he'd overcome cancer, right? And living life to the fullest, like going on family holidays now, every year. Whereas all they did was bring up anxiety for months beforehand, and it was all programming. It was all a story. And that's not to say there aren't physiological and chemical reactions that can cause this stuff, but when we recognize the words that we use or the images that we create for ourselves, and we start to change those, that actually does change our physiology. That actually changes the neuroplasticity in our brain, and that drives these amazing shifts on where we're capable of going. And as you said, our past is not our potential, right?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal seeing it, isn't it? I mean, I know we get kind of excited when we talk about it because we see it. But what do you? I'm curious from your end, having coached so many people, what do you look for in somebody who is going to make change quickly? What if you were to give some pieces of advice to people who are out there saying, I think I want to make change at some point. I just wonder what you're looking for. What do they need? What are the characteristics?
Step one is make the decision. Like, I want to change is not the same as, right, I'm going to find out what it takes to change. So all change comes with a decision. The decision is generally reinforced. The motivation to stick with it comes from a clear vision of what it's like when this problem's solved. For example, what is my life? If I didn't have anxiety about family holidays, what would life be like? So that brightness of future. So the decision multiplied by the brightness of future, that's where it's all got to start. You've got to have a place you want to end up that means something emotionally so that you can keep going through the tough bits. Because after the decision, then, you're going to have to do the work. And doing the work, you've got to have the clarity of the end point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's that manifest. You need to know what it feels like to be the person, right? Who are you when you achieve those things, so that you can bring that person back to now to make the decisions to achieve those things. Yeah.
Well, just that, like, this is worth so much for me. I'm going to go through whatever I have to go through. It's like, it's work. It's bloody work. There's no way around it. It's not like, oh, touch me with the magic wand, Bruce, and it'll all go away. It's like, as you say, you have a breakthrough, and next thing you know, something's thrown up, and you go, I thought I dealt with that, and you have to go through reinforcing. Hang on a minute, that's just a thought, and use the tools. So yeah, you've the decision and the brightness of future, what it means. And I said emotionally, energy in motion. I can't stick with anything unless I know why I want what's at the end of it, what it means to me personally.
Yeah. What if you can't feel that? What if you don't know what it means to be there? So somebody says, "Yeah, I've got a decision. I'll make the decision. Right? I want to make change.
Yeah.
I feel like I
Yeah.
need to make change. I don't quite know how or why. Yeah, I can't. What happens when you get those people who can't put themselves in that future version of themselves yet?
I have found everyone knows why they want something. I've yet to work with someone who can't describe, I want to be the best father I can be to my kids. The fact that they're totally screwed up right now is irrelevant. It's like, okay, tell me, what is being that great father? What would it be like? Most people can list one or two things. Like, I work with some guys that are tradies, and they're not out giving speeches every day, but they go, well, I don't know, I just want him to feel like, he can take on challenges and overcome them. I go, great. So you want to be a guy. So everyone's got it. What happens, and this is what happens, is they go, I'd really like that. And then they go, but I don't know how. And that's where you and I come in. See, we're the masters of the how. You tell me what you want to achieve. I can design the program that'll take you there. Because, like, if you're committed to that, the how, I will work out the how. But if you haven't got the what and the why, you're going to give up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the challenge I see for people, and I hear from people, because we do nearly 1,000 coaching calls a year, within Uncommon Man before people even jump into program.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, they may be able to say it, like you said, but in terms of them actually feeling it, touching it, tasting it, really understanding what it is.
Oh, yeah. So
I think that's a challenge. I think for a lot of people that's where a lot of the fear exists. Well, holy shit, I don't really know what that feels like, and
well, I don't know. Yeah,
there's
well,
a fear
there's
a fear of the mountain that has to be climbed to get there. Yeah,
absolutely. And most guys have been systematically trained to shut off from feelings. So I agree with you. I don't expect people to be perfect when they start. So the level of feeling they've
But
got
only when they're
about
finished. They've got to be
what's that?
perfect when they're finished. They've got to
Yeah,
be perfect when they're finished. Yeah.
yeah, they will be just like you
Like
and me.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Thank God for that. So,
Yeah.
but it's an evolution, you see, because they've got all these layers that have been stacked on. It's like, don't show your emotion. Don't dare to hope, because I've been
Yeah.
disappointed so many times. So I agree. Many men are shut off with their feelings. However, I've found, and maybe that's part of the role you and I have, in the right environment, they can start to feel. So I
100%
just
they
get
can.
the what
Yeah.
and the why at stage one. The what and the why, as you've told me on a number of occasions, what people are awake to of who they can be and how they feel after a year is way different to when they start.
Mm.
So I think it's just a matter of
Yep.
graduation. I can't expect someone who's been shut down for frickin' 25 years to suddenly go, I'm going to feel excited about my future. But it's in them. I do believe
Yes.
there's a little bit in everyone, and without that, they're not going to stick with it. They'll give up.
Absolutely. And that's the message. That's a clear message I feel we need to get to people, right?
Yep.
Even if you can't feel it, it's not perfect right now, change is possible. You can
That's
make
it.
this change.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's
But
it.
we've got to allow them to feel that. And we've also got
Yeah.
to accept the fact that you don't have to feel it the way we do, right? You'll
That's
feel it,
right.
whatever it is, just by you listing it. I want to
Yeah.
be a great dad. Sweet.
Yeah.
That's enough. That
Yeah.
should be enough for you to get
Yeah.
motivated to get started.
That's right.
Because as you go through the process, you'll learn this, right? Get started because change is possible.
That's
Yeah.
right. Biggest tip I've got, and the minute I've got left, get freaking started. You'll
Yes.
grow and develop, it'll unfold, it'll get better and easier, but get freaking started. That's
Yeah.
probably actually the most important thing. Get started.
Get started. Which was the very first thing you said. I need to have a desire. If you even have the slightest desire, the slightest inkling, get fucking started. Because
Yep.
nothing changes if nothing changes. We know that.
That's right.
Beautiful, mate. Been awesome to spend 37 and a half minutes.
That's right.
We weren't sure where to go. We've had some fun. Might be some
Yep.
gold in there.
Might be.
Hope anybody having a look at that got something out of it. But yeah. Hey, thanks for your time, mate.
Beauty. Look forward to the next one.
Do it again soon.
Yeah.
Cheers.
See ya.
See you, mate.